Well, good evening and welcome to this episode of Warbird Tube. Welcoming everyone watching in on Facebook, on YouTube, and those of you on GoToMeeting. This is episode number 83 of Warbird Tube, and on tonight's episode, we'll get an update on the Central Texas Wings P-39 and its recent trip to AirVenture in Oshkosh. But if we could do us a favor before we get started, if you haven't already done it, please take a second to like or share or hit the subscribe button and follow us. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, also click that bell icon and you'll get notifications when the new episodes of Warbird Tube are going live. Now, as you're watching tonight's presentation, you may have some questions. Just type them into the comment section and we'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. All right, so joining me now from his hangar in Texas, John Cyrier from the Central Texas Wing. Good evening, John, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Glad to be here.
So where exactly are you located in Texas?
We're here in the just south of Austin in my here on my ranch in Lockhart, Texas.
All right, and I understand Texas is big, and there's been some flooding and things. You get any of that, or just a little bit of rain?
No, we got some well-needed rain actually where we're at. So glad to have the rain, but yes, in Dallas-Fort Worth area, a little flooding up there, and El Paso too. Big state.
Yeah, that is true. Well, tonight we're going to talk about the P-39, and that is one of the aircraft that's in the stable of the Central Texas Wing. Quite a few different aircraft there, but this one is going to take the spotlight tonight because it recently made it all the way up to Oshkosh for the EIA fly-in.
It sure did. Yeah, we're fortunate at the Central Texas Wing. We have, I believe it's like 7 aircraft, and I would say almost all of them are flying, which is pretty incredible. It says a lot about our volunteers and our mechanics there at Central Texas Wing.
Right. We're going to zero in tonight on the gentleman that we're looking at right now, and that is Bud Anderson, Triple A's from World War II, and he's a perennial favorite at Warbirds in Review at Oshkosh. And if you haven't read his book yet, what are you waiting for? To Fly and Fight. It's an excellent book, and like I said, if you haven't read it yet, you need to go find it and read it. But he has been kind enough to share his stories and memories with many of us through the years, and same sort of thing happened this year. But let's go back because most people know him flying the P-51 Mustang. But tell us a little bit about his first Old Crow.
Yeah, the original Old Crow, as we like to say. It's the P-39 Q model. I was one of those that read his book probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when I received it and went through it and knew that he and Chuck Yeager flew P-39s before they went off to Europe. What I didn't know is that there was an actual personalized, and the very first Old Crow was his P-39, and that was a surprise to me that I found out at least a couple of years ago when one of our Central Texas Wing members brought that to our attention. Vern did.
Yeah, it's quite an airplane, and of course, early in the war, before the Mustang was manufactured in greater numbers, the P-39s were some of the frontline fighters that we had going for us. So he's got the P-39 there with his crew chief and looking like a fighter pilot should.
Hey, what a stud! I mean, go back to that if you can. Scroll back, Steve, to that sure. Picture. It's one of my favorites, and right above Colonel Anderson, it actually says Lieutenant Anderson painted on the side of the plane. But also, too, what's special about this and in these markings is celebrating the crew chiefs of the war. And Otto Hino is the crew chief for Bud Anderson. It says Sergeant Hino right above there, and that's him in the middle of the picture. What's special about this, Otto followed Colonel Anderson all through Europe as well, was his crew chief on the P-51 Mustang. And as some of y'all know that follow Colonel Anderson, he talks very fondly of Otto and the stories about his crew chief saving him and having never came back on a mission because of mechanical issues or anything like that. Talked about even changing out his spark plugs every mission because Otto took care of Bud.
Certainly did. And let's see. Yeah, I think we probably went by the picture earlier, but that's Bud Anderson's car in the background there.
Yeah, That's his 1939 Ford convertible. Now get this. So there it is in California.
Right.
And so that picture earlier was him standing in front, and you see the 39 convertible in the background. So how special is it that we've got, Bud actually had the Brownie camera. This is Bud's photographs that he took. You think about it, he was there in California, grew up there. So he was able to have his car there, which he talks about in his book, his 39 Ford convertible, and how his buddies, his other fighter pilot buddies, young, being 21 years old, tearing that car up, and how he got so mad at them, taking it from them and using it. But anyways, how, just a special, pictures, and then how neat it was that he had this camera with him and documented the old Crow, the P-39.
Yeah, it's something. What's the significance of the logo on the door?
So that's what I was told too. Let me just kind of say this. You'll see sometimes the logo yellow. Ours is the 363rd Fighter Squadron, and that was actually a new logo for them when it's a light blue, or kind of a medium blue. I've actually seen an original patch that Bud has. One of his squadron mates actually had of the painting of that, but supposedly the first logo, and you'll see more pictures of it, but it's a skull, and it's got the a dagger going through it, and supposedly, and I don't know how it could be, but it was a little bit more gruesome, the original one, and so they had to change it up, and that's what they ended up with.
There we've got a little better picture of it.
Yeah, 363rd. And then you can also see the writing there alongside Bud, and and again, there he is. Think about this. This is 1943. I think it's kind of mid to late 43. Bud's a brand new pinned on lieutenant and a fighter pilot, getting ready to be sent overseas. And look at him. I mean, look at him smiling, and just an absolute stud there, standing on the, in behind his door of his P-39, his first fighter.
That is pretty neat. And we've got a little piece of video here that's going to kind of set up the rest of our presentation tonight. But tell us a little bit about, before we watch the video, how you got to the point of actually making this phone call that we're going to see.
Yeah, this is this video is an interview that we did. A couple of guys in our Central Texas wing put this together, helped put the video together. So, again, Bud Anderson turned 100 years old earlier this year in January, and here he is in California at his home. You can see his office there where he's doing this video feed, and I'm sitting in our Central Texas wing hangar there in San Marcos, and behind me is our P-39. And so what led up to this is, like I said, a couple of years ago, we found out that, or at least I did, that there was a old Crow P-39, and thought, wow, wouldn't that be special to, to have the markings of Bud Anderson's P-39. We had Fiedler as was one of our paint schemes. Fiedler was the only American ace that scored all of his victories in a P-39. So we honored Fiedler before this paint scheme. And so, but to have Bud Anderson's airplanes, all three of them, because we've known, the B model, Jack Roush's B model, Old Crow, and then of course his D model as well that's out there, and see those really neat photos. And then the idea came, wow, what if we could get all three of them together? And if, at the time Bud was 98, thinking, man, it could be, what his 100th birthday, what a great tribute and an honor to have all three of his fighters. It's one thing, to have one of your fighters painted or one of your planes painted from the day, but here we were able to put all three of them together. So this video is actually an interview. It's a 45-minute long interview we did. I specifically focused on the P-39 in his early years of flying, but I think the section you're going to show here is us breaking the news to Colonel Anderson about, and asking permission. That was the other thing. I wanted to make sure the family worked very closely with his son, Jim Anderson, on all this, and just a great family, and great partners in all this. Well, Colonel Anderson, as we talked about your P-39 Old Crow, here at the Central Texas wing of the Commemorative Air Force, right behind me, we have our own P-39Q model, just like Old Crow back in the day.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if we could have the honor of putting the markings of your Old Crow on our P-39.
Are you kidding? It's my pleasure and I feel honored if you would do that. That's very exciting.
Well, it's an honor and privilege for us. I mean, you're a national treasure, and you're always so open for many, many years, ever since after the war, with your time and educating us and reminding us what you, the greatest generation, did for us. And so what a privilege it'll be to have your P-39Q Old Crow flying again up in the air. Wouldn't it be great to have you with the other Old Crows, all three of your Old Crows now together?
And that would be outstanding. And of course, we can get all kinds of ground photos, but to get a formation shot, that would be great.
We all would love to see that. What a special tribute to you and your comrades that flew those aircraft and did so much for our nation and, quite frankly, the world.
Which of course is going to lead us into the trip to Oshkosh and being able to not only show Bud off the P-39, but the other two airplanes, and also get that formation shot that you talked about. We'll get to that in good time. John, you mentioned that you just recently checked out in the P-39 before the trip.
Yeah. Yeah. How about that? Yeah, kind of I think I'm the newest P-39 pilot in the world. So I still can claim that, declare that. So no, I had the fortunate opportunity to sponsor our P-39. We've had this aircraft. It's one of the older airplanes in the CAF fleet. We originally acquired it back in like 62, 64. And then in 1974, John Stokes, our founder of the Central Texas wing here in San Marcos, was the one that paid for the restoration of it and started flying it. So we've been the caretakers of this aircraft for a very long time, and it's only one of only three, I believe, flying airworthy right now. So in the world, so very rare, and so that just adds to the privilege, I should say, of being able to be one of the pilots of this aircraft. But yes, I've been actually working really hard the last couple of years. I've had some time on my hands. I sold my business and had some time during the COVID, like many of us, and just really been focusing on this. I've actually been wanting to fly a World War II fighter since I was 11 years old, and when my brother took me to my first CAF air show up in Denton, and after that I was hooked. And so to have this privilege is something. So we were, it's like many things, and especially big projects like this, taking an 80-year-old airplane and getting it up to Oshkosh and all the logistics, and then coordinate with the family and all that. There's a lot of boxes that had to be checked, and there's a lot of things that had to go our way. And fortunately, they did. It was a lot of work and a lot of planning and a lot of effort amongst a lot of people that made this all happen. But I kind of tell and I was always coordinating, back and forth with Jim Anderson, Bud's son, and going back and forth with him. And I go, I know I'm not this lucky, so we must have the still some of the luck of Colonel Anderson with us, because things really fell into place. And everything from weather to, like I said, an 80-year-old airplane mechanically being able to go up there, and then all the boxes that I needed to check off to make sure I was safe to make sure to protect and fly this airplane.
How long did it take to fly from Texas to Oshkosh?
Well, it's if we could go the whole distance, it wouldn't take that long at all at 250 miles an hour. But the one of the things about the P-39, it does have short legs, and as you can see here, when we went to Oshkosh, we do have a 75-gallon auxiliary fuel belly tank that some of the pilots, we've used it in the past, but on this trip we just went without it, and so my legs were the maximum that I did was an hour and a half. So there was like four legs is what we did, but one of those, or a couple of them actually, were only 30-minute quick hops, and that was to get us in position to make that trip into Oshkosh. As you all know, getting into Oshkosh is sometimes a little hectic, and the last thing I wanted to do is to have a hold for a while, especially being in this airplane. So we stationed there in I think it was Freeport, Illinois, which is just a 30-minute hop. And I also might add, another part of the planning was my brother Mark and I own a T-28 together, and so very fortunate. Mark's been super supportive on this, and Mark flew off my wing all the way up there. He was our support aircraft, which is actually pretty comparable. I mean, the T-28 did very well as a chase platform for this effort.
Awesome. How long did the entire process take from, I guess, the point of the wing saying, yeah, let's investigate this, let's see if we can do it, to getting all the way to Oshkosh?
It's hard to say, really. I mean, I think that, like I said, the idea to me kind of stemmed probably a couple of years ago, with that notion of just finding out there was an old Crow P-39 and how neat it would be to see them all together and honor Bud Anderson, to changing the insignias, to getting permission. There's, believe it or not, there's money involved too. Y'all were fortunate, and I think some of the viewers may recall, it was about I don't know when that was, maybe 8 months ago, a year ago, probably about 8 months ago. We did one of these webinars. Ray Clausen and I, our mechanic, and I went on, and we talked about converting the brakes on this P-39, and that's been a big project. So I would add that into this process for sure, because we didn't know if we were going to have the brakes finished in time and the money raised, and that was a big part of getting the P-39 up and running and flying again.
Yeah, that was part of the 12 Planes of Christmas. So some of the donations that were raised during that, so it was I think December, as around the 20th or so that we were on, helped to help fund this project as well, getting the wheels and brakes done on the airplane. Absolutely,
and again, if we didn't have that fundraising effort through the 12 Planes of Christmas, we wouldn't have been able to make this mission.
So for those who did see that, and anyone who contributed to the project, thank you for helping make this possible. We do have one question from one of our viewers. Do you know where the name Old Crow came from? Why did he pick that?
Yeah, I think Bud Anderson says it a couple different times, but what he says is it is for his Baptist friends. He says that's the smartest, wisest bird in the sky, which it is. I think legend shows, and we all know that a crow is a pretty wise, smart bird. So I think that's very appropriate, especially for Bud Anderson's airplane. But as he says to his drinking buddies, they all know it's that Kentucky bourbon that they all loved so much back in the day, because not that it was good, but he said it was pretty cheap, and I guess it still is.
So the sunset shot from the Warbird ramp.
I don't think I could smile any bigger right there. That's literally that's my brother Mark, and then Tennyson, who went with us on the trip. Tennyson was our kind of like the old crew chiefs of the day. Tennyson, I think, is around 21 years old, and college student there at Texas State, and he has been helping us cleaning and working and understanding the airplane. And he flew in the back seat of the T-20. It was invaluable for the whole trip. So I kind of call him the crew chief of the day. So neat experience for all of us.
There we go. So what was Bud's reaction when he saw the airplane for the first time?
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about this. And I mean, it's such a unbelievable privilege and honor to spend more time with Bud Anderson. I got to meet him about 15 years ago in Idaho and talked to him there then, and just admired him, just like we all do, of just his humility and just unbelievable efforts and heroic efforts that he did during the war, and his buddies and everybody, and then him to come up and see the P-39 for the first time. It was so special. I mean, he literally wanted to touch it, and then you'll see. I wanted to recreate, besides getting the pictures in the air and the pictures on the static on the ground, but I really wanted to recreate some of those shots of him, by his airplane. Even this one here is basically that shot that you see with his Ford convertible in the background. Well, he's standing there, and then you'll notice the props at a little bit of an angle. It's not straight up and down perfect, which will give some people heartburn, but I did that because that's the way it looked in that photograph that he took in 1943. But he's just, him and his family, all of them, were just so grateful, and it just made it that much more special.
Definitely. Well, the centerpiece is really the Warbirds in Review session, and you were a part of that. And this turned out to be probably one of the longer sessions that they've had for Warbirds in Review. What was it like to be, first of all, to be the center of attention? Well, I know there's Bud, but then, I mean, you're right next to him. What was that like for you? And then just describe, how the crowd reacted and how Bud did as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, this was all for Bud Anderson, and leading up to this, there was, again, always when you're dealing with 80-year-old airplanes and a big trip and a lot of logistics and things like that, and we actually had 2 aircraft with the T-28 also being alongside of us. Things came up, and Mark and I, my brother, and I would remind each other, we're doing this for Bud Anderson. I mean, this was solely for him, to honor him, and to just give him all the credit. And so to be there at Warbirds in Review, I said it at the beginning, I believe, of when they were introducing us. It's a little bit unreal, the fact that I've been going to Oshkosh for about 20 years, been watching these Warbirds in Review. Bud's kind of a fixture, having the 2 P-51s there, and the old pros, and him telling his stories, and I know I've seen that at least a couple of times in the past. And so here he is at 100 years old. I'm up there with Jack Roush, as you can see there, and it's, I'm sitting there thinking about, this is the first time that he's seen that plane in 79 years. This literally was the first time that Colonel Anderson saw the plane up close. He saw it earlier taking off and landing. We were doing a photo shoot mission, and he said that he got to see it from a distance and how excited he was. That was technically his first time. But then here, as you can see, he was sitting right next to it, and he kept looking up at it. But for me, it was just special to think. I mean, can't imagine. I can't imagine living to 100, but then looking back and going, man, I was 21 years old when I saw that plane last, or saw those markings last. I can only imagine what was going through his head on that. And then the crowd, a large crowd for this. As you can see, the people were off to the sides and in corners and all over. And then it's supposed to last for an hour. They told us it was lasting an hour. We had actually, the photo ship missions, the photos that we did with Bud, and we started briefing at 5:30 that morning. Landed on Monday night. Literally got up I think I was up at 4 just because I was so excited. But 5:30 brief. But Colonel Anderson was out on the field, I think, at around, I don't know, 7:30, 8 o'clock. So they had gotten him up early. 2 hours. He's used to being in California time on top of that. But 100 years old, he's going first thing in the morning and getting pulled around, and everybody wants a piece of him because it's Bud Anderson. He's at Oshkosh. he's going like crazy, and he's signing everything, and then he sits through this, and it was hot. I mean, I'm sitting out there going, man, I'm worn out, just from the day already. And I kept looking over there going, there's no way, there's no excuses for me. We actually did this thing for 2 hours. He just kept going.
Yeah, he's one amazing guy. Who is, as we're looking at this picture, Connie Bolin is in the background, who heads up Warbird's in Review, but who's sitting right next to you?
That's Jim. I should remember his name.
Hagedorn.
Yeah,
Hagedorn.
he's the one that owns the D model.
Yep.
And Miracle Grow. It does all the sponsorships. So generous with, his time. Is actually one of the big reasons why we were able to do the Warbirds in Review is because of Jim. So I believe he's out of Florida as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Just another overall shot of the setup there. Wow.
Yeah. So they had, Jim and Jack Roush because of the B model, and then myself talking about the P-39, and then of course Bud Anderson himself, the pilot of all three.
Did you take questions from the audience?
We did. Yeah, we took a few at the end, and then went through that, and usual stuff about the P-39 because it's different, right? It's a unique airplane, and it's something that you don't see all the time too. That's the other thing about air shows and Warbirds. You don't see a P-39, or you don't know much about them. Mm-hmm. And that was also one of the reasons behind all this, was that part of the CAF mission, which, this mission, and I've said this before, and I'll say it right now, is this mission to get the P-39 as Old Crow and get it up to Oshkosh embodies the mission of the Commemorative Air Force. It educates, which is what we did about the P-39 itself and about the World War II men and women who were a part of this. And then it inspires, which I know we did. We inspired a lot of new up and coming people to get involved with the Commemorative Air Force. And then, of course, it honors, and it did this in a big way. It honored Bud Anderson and his comrades that did so much for us in World War II.
Any questions from the audience that threw you, that had you off guard, or were you an ace with all the questions?
No, definitely not an ace, and new to, like I said, new to this community and fighters and all that. But I think most people, even the experienced pilots, because there's a few of us that get to fly the P-39. It's kind of funny for me because this really is the only the only fighter that I'm flying. So people go, hey, what's it fly like? And I'm I've flown in a dual control P-40 and a dual control P-51, but those have been years ago. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to compare it to flying a single seat P-51 or whatever, because I haven't done it. At least hopefully not yet. I haven't done it, but I had a lot of those questions, and that's one thing that I also feel good about, is just telling people exactly my experience with it, and flying this airplane. Just an incredible, to me, I'm a mechanical engineering background. And so for me, I love the mechanics of this. And that's what makes this plane also so special. I just think it's pretty incredible to believe that it was designed in the mid to late 30s. The technology that went into it and the design, it really was ahead of its time, so to speak. And I think that's what kind of added to the mystique and some of the, I will say, complaints of the P-39, is just, as you watch other, history about it and read about it, I think there's a lot of misconceptions with it. And even Bud Anderson, after kind of going through this and talking to him, it was very special to hear Bud actually praise the P-39. He obviously it's hard to go from a P-39, you get over to Europe with some experience behind you, and now you're flying Mustangs. I mean, of course, everything's not as good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's flying the North American Mustang. But what he does say, and this is where it gives a lot of credit to the P-39, is he talks about how, he knows that his success over in Europe was those early hours. This was his first fighter. He's over in the United States. He's actually training some of the new recruits. He's a flight leader. And so they put him in it. So he's teaching them how to do formation flying and doing some basic maneuvering stuff. And then, but more importantly, what he talks about is doing his I think he did 2 or maybe 3 actually gunnery schools in a P-39. I think it was 2 in the P-39, and how important that was to get that gunnery school and learn the ballistics and learn how to fly those speeds and what to do. And that was all done in this plane. And he gives a lot of credit to those early hours, his 6 months or so flying the P-39 before going over to Europe.
Right. We see him. He's obviously autographed the airplane, so it's his now, right?
It's always been his in my book. But no, yeah, he did. That was one of the things that I wanted to make sure we got away with was a signature of his, and that's been clear coated over many times, and hopefully it'll stay on there for a while. But as you can see, that was all smiles. That was the next day. That was on Wednesday morning. We had him out there, and a lot of photographers too, and a lot of magazines. You'll be seeing that stuff coming out here shortly. There'll be a lot of articles about the P-39 and Bud Anderson again celebrating his 100th birthday.
My follow-up question was going to be, did you put anything over that to protect the signature? So good, some good coats of clear coat. We'll take care of that for you.
First thing we did, no, we made sure we protected that signature, and it's neat too. He signed a lot of our stuff, pictures and things like that. But he signed our plane, 363rd Fighter Squadron. You used to Bud Anderson with the 357th, but this is his 363rd. So I thought that was special too, that he was able to do that for us and celebrate those years.
Good. We've got a couple of questions on the P-39 itself. We'll try to get a couple of these in. The hump right behind the cockpit. What is that?
Yeah, the air intake. That's the air intake for the engine itself. So, yep.
Right. So it actually is forcing the air down because the engine is actually behind the pilot.
Yeah, it's actually right behind the pilot.
Yeah, and for those who you mentioned, this is a late '30s design. There were a lot of things with this aircraft that were, as you said, not conventional. I mean, it's tricycle gear. The door, which is almost like a car door or a truck door, you can roll the window down, was unusual. The having the mid-engine, the drive shaft running through the cockpit, all those things kind of. I can imagine when that airplane was presented on the line, there were probably a lot of pilots who just didn't want anything to do with it because it didn't look right. It didn't look like a P-40 of the time. Or even a P-36.
And that's just it. And you got to remember, they came just like Bud. They came from a T6. You got a radial engine, and more importantly, it's a tail wheel. It's a traditional, conventional tail wheel, and so they come up to this, and then they're some of the early questions were, hey, that engine behind me, it's going to crush me, right? If I get in an accident, that engine's, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, guess what's going to happen? You hit something, the engine's going to crush you forwards or backwards. I mean. Yeah. So, and then the other piece of it too is that you got the drive shaft that goes to the gear reduction box just right behind the spinner there, and so you have, I think the drive shaft's close to 11 foot long to reach from the Allison V12 up to the front, and so you can imagine guys like Bud who was driving a 1939 Ford as he has in the picture with a drive shaft. He's thinking, man, that thing's going to come apart, or it's going to break it, the differential and, beat the plane to death like it does in my old cars that weren't, designed for that. So, but there's no cases that I know of or I've read or heard of that ever had a drive shaft failure. But and that's, there's several reasons that the Bell Aircraft out of Buffalo, New York, that designed it this way. Again, pretty revolutionary. It was revolutionary. I mean, to have the engine behind gave several advantages to the P-39. One is, and I think the plane's beautiful. I mean, not just because I fly it, but just because of the shape of it. It's very sleek, and it shows, and it performs that way. If you look at the nose profile, without having, since you don't have the engine in the front, you got that narrow nose. Very aerodynamic, very sleek. It's almost like a bullet. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, with that engine there, you have that room, that compartment. That's I don't know if that was the main reason, but it's definitely a big part of it. Is you have a 37 millimeter cannon and 250 cals up in that nose section, and so all underneath that 152 in that picture there, under that panel, is where a 37 millimeter cannon. Sometimes they replaced it with, like the Russians did, they replaced it with a 20 millimeter. Mm-hmm. but you had a huge cannon that had 30 rounds of 37 millimeter, and then 250 cals. You can see those in those ports just right above the spinner and the blades there. Enormous firepower. I mean, it's the A-10 of World War II, and so they did the same thing. They designed it around the gun. They designed this around the armament. The other thing too that just kind of thought through and been told is, it's a nose wheel gear. Very rare in a fighter, at least especially a single engine. The P-38 obviously had nose wheel, but here in a single wheel, well, one of the reasons why you didn't put a nose wheel up there is because you had an engine, right? It was hard to retract a nose wheel into an engine compartment. Well, without the engine, they were able to put it as a tricycle gear, which, many of the accidents, especially during training, and this is being, many of the accidents were landing and takeoff because of the tailwheel aircraft. And so that gave an advantage of having that sleeker nose, and not having that engine in front of you also I'll tell you, as a pilot, it's also, you have different noises that you're hearing. You're not hearing all that exhaust. I mean, you definitely hear the engine, don't get me wrong, it's right behind you, but you don't have it right in front of you in the slipstream, and you definitely do not have all the heat. Flying any of the radial engines or even these fighters where you don't have the heat coming off at your feet. Instead, it's a little bit different, is you get a lot of cool air. The Bell aircraft, there's always positive air in the cockpit. Either you can adjust it for some heat coming off the engine, or you adjust it where it's just those air intakes in the front nose there to allow air to come in. And so you're always having positive air. And one thing that was kind of interesting to me is when I took off and started building up airspeed is the amount of airflow that comes over your feet, over the rudder pedals. And they did that because of the cannon and the 50 cals in the front. They didn't want the exhaust gases from the gunpowder and the cannons to fill up make you sick and knock you out with all the smells. So they had positive air pressure inside to push those airs out.
Amazing. There you are with your smile again.
Yeah. I'm
You
still
smiled
smiling.
all week,
Yeah.
didn't you?
Still smiling.
So obviously, your brother and Bud and you, who are the other two in the picture there?
Yeah, there's Jim Anderson and also Bud's daughter. So the two siblings of Bud Anderson, and his wife has passed away. But again, this is if you notice, and that's my brother Mark there on the outside. But we did the photo of just of Bud and his two kids there. Because that was the picture that you saw earlier. He had his crew chief and them. So it recreated a lot of the photos of back in the day.
It's awesome. A few more questions about the 39. One of our viewers, this is interesting, is restoring a static P-39 for the Planes of Fame Museum. And he's wondering if you know of any drawings to help with working on the carb air intake scoop that we just talked about behind the cockpit.
Well, I don't know if I've got those drawings. Obviously I've gone through a lot of the original drawings and things like that, but I bet there's some listeners or some people out there that may have those, may have some help for that. I've actually heard about that P-39 at Planes of Fame. I was told at one time that they may be making it airworthy. Is that true as well? As we're going to have a fourth one flying? I don't know if the viewer or somebody else out there knows, but I've been told that one may be airworthy or become airworthy, which would be awesome.
Okay. Would that be something that Air Corps would have?
Yes, Air Corps, of course, is just the jewel of all these drawings, and that's where I've gone to look up different things on the P-39, all the manuals and everything.
For you now, this might be a difficult question because this is the only fighter you've flown, right? But is there much difference handling the 39 with the nose wheel than a tail wheel aircraft?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably a question that anybody can answer that flies both a nose wheel and a tail wheel. There's an advantage to it. I've got a lot of tail wheel time. I own a Stearman biplane that I've had it for 16 years, and most of my hours are tail wheel. I got 1,700 hours of it. It's all tail wheel. So I'm used to the tail wheel aspect of it, but it sure is nice with the speeds and everything else you're doing in this fighter to be able to look over the nose as you're rolling out. It's kind of like the T-28. Those of you that know the T-28, same deal, has a free casting nose wheel. The power is very similar in my regard. I think it's very similar. So I tell people that have flown T-28s that was a huge help in transitioning into the P-39. But nose wheel, if it was a tail wheel airplane, I would enjoy it just as much. But yeah, the nose wheel does help, I think, on the visibility and just on the rollout, being able to see ahead.
Sure. What are you doing right here?
Oh, yeah. So this is actually also too. So we don't have a 37 millimeter cannon, so I can't tell you what that's like to fire a 37 millimeter out the nose, or even those 50 cals. Those are just the barrels. But what we do have, and this is early on in our P-39, they added a 23-gallon water tank up in the front. That actually is we have a spray bar on our radiator. As those that race and do the other modified World War II aircraft, to help cool, we have a spray bar that's been added to our P-39. That's one of the things about even a P-40 or some of these radiator liquid cooled engines. They get hot, especially on the ground. If you aren't, you got to constantly be moving. So part of the checklist is literally I'm doing most of the checklist while I'm taxiing out and ready to go. But here you see the good maintenance and mechanics there at Oshkosh. I'm filling up that tank, getting it ready for the next flight. So they gave me a jug of water to fill the top up with.
The glamorous life of a fighter pilot, right?
Oh, whatever it takes.
Did one of our viewers is wondering, did Bud talk about transitioning from the P-39 to the P-51? Did he talk about any of his transitions?
The thing that he talked about was, and some of y'all have heard these stories too, is that there he is how they get over to Europe and there was no operator's manuals for the P-51s. First time they've ever seen that, it was a B model. First time they'd only heard of them. They had never seen a P-51. And so they show up, and as us pilots, I don't know, I have a hard time imagining this, but you show up and there's like no data. There's no book. They had no operator's manual with the planes. He said that they literally went up and just kind of figured it out and told each other, what to do and how to do it. And then later they kind of started getting more information from, I guess, from stateside, started coming over with the aircraft. So, no, he said that, that just like kind of my feelings on it, the transition from a T6 or the power, it's getting used to the speeds, getting used to the power. The P-39's got a small rudder. And that's one of the things that you could see in a P-63, the King Cobra, the small rudder there. So, yes.
Now we get to take a look at the photo shoot. So we've got the three old crows and then a nice silver Mustang in the front, and there's a kind of a little smiling face in the back seat there.
Well, and I'm smiling again. This is actually a picture I took. Craig Hutain was the one flying during the photo missions. Our pilot that's been a sponsor of our P-39, flies with Tora and others, other CAF aircraft and private aircraft. He's actually the pilot during the photo ship missions. And so glad to have him being able to do this, because the photo ship missions were incredible. And this is just one of them. We did two of them, two different sorties to do this. One was just the three old crows together. We went up early and just did those. And then this photo mission. And so I actually took this with just my iPhone out of the window here while they were taking the professional photos. But get this, that's Bud Anderson, and he's he's in the back seat of a TF, a dual control P-51. And I mean, look at him. I mean, I know he went up there and he actually flew a little bit. At 100 years old, he got to fly a Mustang again. But here he is. He looks like he's flying. He's right off our wing. He's in formation, and then you look off of his wing, and how special is this? You got his P-39, his first old crow, his B model P-51, and his D model right off his right wing. Something I thought about, but quite frankly, I was thinking that we would, a year ago or whatever, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe it would be neat if we could get him up in the back of this D model, in the P-51 D model. But that plane's kind of hard to get into. You got to kind of go over the front seat to get into the back seat. That's the those that are watching here, the silver one on the far end, the opposite end. But the Mustang in the forefront where Bud's at, you can see the elongated canopy. It literally slides back. You've got dual controls and instrument, and it was made originally as a trainer for the Mustang fighter. And we were able to get Bud Anderson, or I say we, there was probably 15 people and a bunch of people, there on his side to help him get in that thing. And he kind of joked that once we got him in the plane, he didn't want to leave. He was going to be in it. We were kind of talking about getting him out. And he's like, I don't care. I'm staying in. So, but how special is this going to be? Wait till the professional photographs and videos come of this sortie. There you go. Yeah, incredible to fly around. That's, of course, in Oshkosh that Tuesday morning. There's Bud in the back of the TF model. And, looking down on his 3 planes. I mean, who would ever thunk that he would be able to do that? And, and then for him to say it in that interview we did and that you showed earlier, for him to say, wouldn't it be something to have all 3 of them flying? Well, we did more than that. We got him up there to go fly with them. And there's the old crows together again. Well, I say together again. They never were together, but to be able to see the generation of this fighter pilot, and quite frankly, many others that went through this cycle of P-39, most of them stateside, and then to get cycled into the B model, and then into the later D model, P-51. So kind of neat to see a cycle of from a fighter pilot's perspective.
One of our viewers is wondering if any of these photos will be for sale. And it might be a little too early, or
Yeah, so we have some of the original photographs, and you can see some of these on Bud Anderson's website, To Fly and to Fight. He talks now quite a bit about the P-39. He's got some of his early photos, but we actually are putting together a website. We have had a lot of people ask us. We've actually got it together right now. Before we left, we had asked for donations and to help us get to Oshkosh for some of the cost getting us there, and that was very successful, and we appreciate those that donated. But we've also put together a website. It's up and running, literally brand new, and the merchandise is being added to it. But it's originaloldcrow.org. You can find originaloldcrow.org. You'll find some pictures and some things, and we're going to start adding to it. This literally just got put up this week because we've had so much people asking us for merchandise, for hats, and we've got patches already put together, and then that you can purchase, and then pictures. Bud Anderson has just been such an awesome person to work with. He has signed quite a bit of photos of those black and whites. I wanted some of those black and whites done, like him by the door and the old crow itself. And so we're going to have those up on our website. You can start purchasing those, him signing them or signed photos. And then also too, these photos, as these start coming out, they're actually, there was 2 different photo ships, there was like 4 different photographers that went up. I know, I believe I can say Flight Journal and some of the other magazines, EAA, they're going to have these. This is going to be probably on the front cover. I know I've been told that it's probably going to be on the front cover of like Flight Journal magazines and some of the other magazines that are coming out. So next few weeks, you'll start seeing this and the stories that go with it.
Good. One of our viewers is wondering who owns the 2 Mustangs.
So Jack Roush actually used to own both of them, but he still owns the B model, the green one there, and then the D model is owned by Jim down in Florida. Has owned it. He tells the story. He told the story at the Warbird Review that Jack Roush sold him that D model, and in order to be the next caretaker owner of it, he had to sign a contract that he would not change the paint scheme. It always has to be Old Crow. So that's a heck of a statement there by Jack Roush to honor Bud Anderson as well.
Yeah. So Jim Hagedorn is the
Hagedorn. Thank you.
Yeah. Current caretaker of the D model.
I thought you were going to say current character. He is a character.
Well, yes, he is a character. And let's see. Did Colonel Anderson share his secret to longevity during Warbirds in Review, or any other conversations you had with him?
Yeah, I think I've heard some of that. He seems to be very thankful. And that's one thing I appreciate about Colonel Anderson. He knows that he could have been one of those like some of his buddies, his wingmen, that literally he lost in the war. He's very thankful, and he talks, like I said earlier, about his crew chief taking care of him and making sure his plane was always in tip-top shape. And then he talks about the luck of God, and just luck of just having some things that fell into place and able to get them through this and through life. And I that's one of the things that I just really appreciate is his humility. And him at 100 years old, just going strong. I mean, mentally and physically. That photo just it was so great. We did that photo of him on the door. It was something I really wanted to have. To have that 79 years later at 100 years old. Him standing up on the wing of the P-39. And so we got this wooden stairs that they'd used. It was all the way on the other side of Oshkosh, but we were able to get that the night before and had that all set up, and several of us helping Colonel Anderson up the ladder, up those steps, and on the wing. There was several people that go, "Oh, I don't think we should do this. He's 100. We got to be careful getting up on that little wing and everything." I'm not making this up. We didn't even have the steps all the way fully adjusted, and Colonel Anderson's climbing up there. It was great. He was so excited, and I hope I'm that flexible and that good at 65 years old, more or less 100 years old.
Yeah, it is amazing the effect that those airplanes can have. Actually, any airplane can have on someone who's flown them. It's the years are just absolutely erased, and he's 21 again, standing on the wing. You have to witness it, and when you do, it's really very, very special. Let's see, any possibility that the P-39 is going to make it over to Air Base Georgia?
I haven't heard that one yet. We are actually starting to get requests. So I know Wings Over Houston is already on our list. I'm sure it'll go to Wings Over Dallas for our headquarters air show. But yeah, that is actually one of the things that keeps this bird flying is the appearance costs and things like that. So yeah, those that are on, that are watching tonight or have the opportunity to request or can get us to an air show, I'm sure we can do what we can to get it there. Within reason, because it's very special, and now that people are seeing it, they want to see it, and now that they're learning the history, that's one of the purposes of doing this is getting the P-39 out.
Yeah, one of the photos that you added on, and I think there must be a story for every fuel stop you made, because you can't land at an airport anywhere with a P-39 and a T-28 without drawing attention.
Yes, that was actually, I think, our first stop, if I'm not mistaken, there. That was in Paris, Texas, that is. Yeah. No, that was our first stop. There's my brother on the wing of the T-28 and then me on the P-39. But you're right, when two of these warbirds show up, two very unique sounds, by the way, when you come over in the pattern and in all the towns that we stopped in, everybody was so gracious. And again, we got to tell the story. They were asking about the P-39 or the markings, and so it's just another opportunity to touch some people and everybody being gracious to help us out and get us on our way to the next stop.
And there's a picture that you don't see every day either. T-28 off the wing of a P-39.
Yeah, that was my view there, and seeing the wing-mounted guns, and then our T-28 and Mark being there, and it was, again, it was just comforting to have him there, and at each stop, and especially Tennyson in the back to be able to help, and as you know, these warbirds, they take oil and fuel and a lot of things you got to check before you're off on the next trip. So it was great to have them alongside of us.
One of our viewers is wondering if the airplane has a supercharger.
It has a supercharger, gear-driven supercharger, and again, that was kind of one of the things that kept it from going into Europe or doing more action. Is it didn't have a turbocharger, and so it's a low altitude aircraft. I think General Yeager even speaks about the performance below 5,000 feet in a he'll take a P-39 any day because of the low altitude performance. But once it got up to altitude, no, without the turbocharger, it was not as effective above 12,000 feet. Oh, Steve, did we lose you?
Oh, sorry about that.
There we go.
You got to unmute to talk, right? With the success of the aviation-themed Hollywood films like Top Gun Maverick and the redo of Midway, do you know of any discussions to maybe do something with Bud Anderson's story?
I have heard that there is another biography movie that is coming out. Yes, and it's very timely. I didn't know that when we started this project, but been told by the family, and actually there was several photographers and writers there at Oshkosh that were gathering information. So yes, I hope to see that soon.
Did you put the P-39 in for any of the judging? Did it bring home any awards from Oshkosh?
No, I'll be honest with you, that wasn't the purpose of the mission, and no, we did not. Got a ton of attention. We were only there, and I know several people that were there, and they wanted to see it, and we actually were there very quick. I mean, we got in on Monday evening, and we left Thursday morning. We had one mission to celebrate Bud Anderson, and then we needed to take this special aircraft back, and we wanted to kind of beat some of the, as y'all know at Oshkosh, the rush of the crowds trying to leave and come in on the Friday, Saturday. So those that didn't get to see it at Oshkosh, I apologize for leaving on Thursday, but again, that's the purpose of this, the tour other places, and you can see it. Hopefully you can come see it. I just said it. Come see it down in San Marcos. It's there in our beautiful World War II hangar at the Central Texas Wing.
Definitely. And a number of folks who were going south left on Thursday and Friday because the weather was going to start to deteriorate in the southern part of the United States over the weekend. So yeah, you weren't the only one who was heading home a little early just to beat the weather. And you've kind of touched on this, but I'll give you a chance to expand on it a little more. One of our viewers asks, as our World War II veterans become less able to tell their own stories, using the aircraft to showcase this story is pretty incredible. How do you feel now, looking back, being a part of at least this chapter in Bud Anderson's history?
Well, I appreciate that, because that is one of the things that I found very important. I have been with my Stearman biplane. I have flown with a lot of World War II veterans and given rides and things like that, and hear their stories. Matter of fact, I gave a 103-year-old a Stearman ride last year, and so we're losing those stories. We're losing those men and women, and so this is a way to archive it, and especially with the technology we are doing tonight and what we did with that interview via video with Bud sitting in his house in California. And this is a main purpose, is to educate people, and also too, for me, it's to give respect to the P-39. It played a vital role in our battle against in World War II against the Germans and the Japanese. So I think that's a big part of this, is telling that history, especially getting Bud Anderson to speak about it and to remember and to talk about those stories.
All right, we've got you smiling again. It's you haven't, like you said, you haven't stopped smiling since you took off, did you?
No, it's been a great experience, and very fortunate to have the opportunity, and I appreciate this tonight as well.
Well, we've got another video on a show, and this is you taxiing in after returning from Oshkosh. So we'll take a look here. Now you're coming back to the hangar here at
yeah. This is Thursday evening after flying all the way back and doing all the multiple stops and coming in, and Joe Insminger is actually filming this for me. And it was great to see him back at the hangar late evening on Thursday. Yeah, I think that says it all, doesn't it? Oh, Steve, might be muted again.
We just wanted to pop this up here quick. The
There it is.
original Old Crow website. So, like you said, it's up, and you'll be adding to it as we go. But it is there, right?
Yeah, just and I appreciate, and that's one thing, beautiful thing about the Commemorative Air Force and the volunteers is, a couple of the guys did that video, that interview, Joe and Dominique, and the talents that we've got. Not all of us are pilots and mechanics and things like that, but there's so many different ways to volunteer and that make a big impact on our mission.
Sounds good. Any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
No, I appreciate the Commemorative Air Force and you, Steve, and the time tonight, and look forward to seeing everybody again soon in the original Old Crow.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Again, don't forget to click that like, subscribe, or follow button so we can let you know about future shows. As always, if you have an idea for something you'd like us to discuss, whether it's an aircraft or maybe some stories of some veterans or specific battles or campaigns, just let us know. We'll see what we can do. Send Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Again, thanks to John for joining us tonight and letting us see that gorgeous P-39. We'll look for it hopefully at Wings Over Houston, maybe Wings Over Dallas, and coming to an air show near you. So until next time, I'm Steve Buss, and this is Warbird Tube. Have yourself a great night.